Hey guys, David Jelks from Factor 3 Fitness, and this morning, of course, we have a bit of a snow day here in town, so not a lot of people in the gym. So one of the things that I do when I train, of course, I people watch. I'm very fascinated by what people are doing and various routines, and occasionally I'll find a really kind of cool exercise combination that I think, oh, well, that'd be kind of fun to try. But for the most part, what my main thing is that when I watch people train, and whether it's cardiovascular training on treadmills or the step mill, I can't remember the name of the step mill, or various other forms of cardiovascular training. I watch what people are doing, and what I'm looking for, and it's not in a form of criticism, but it's just an awareness of how I teach. So when I'm looking at instructing people forward, and I'm looking for, of course, something to dialogue about. Generally, it comes around, the dialogue generally comes in around the issues around posture, right? Having postural, a really good postural setup when you're training. And quite often what you'll see is, of course, a lot of rounded posture when people on the elliptical and their body is just rounded forward and their arms and shoulders are kind of they're in front of them, they're hunched over, like they're going for a really long run. Their head is way in front of the spine. Their weight is not on top of the hips. They're bearing all the stress on their quads. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what is the objective of training? Like, what is the goal? Right? Specifically, what is the goal? Like, so where's all this effort going? What is the goal when you do cardiovascular training? What is the goal? Right? And part of the goal of cardiovascular training is to develop a strong heart and lungs, right? So we want a much more robust heart muscle, a really strong heart muscle. We want better lung capacity, which simply means that we can pull in more oxygen, and we taught our body to have more red blood cells. We can pour more oxygen in. Our muscles of respiration work effectively. The heart muscles working a little bit more consistently, and we do cardiovascular training, predominantly. I think for me, the way I give it to the people I work with is not so much for fat loss. We do it for cardiovascular function, right? I want a strong heart and strong lungs because, well, if they cease to work, then I cease to exist. So fat loss for cardio for me comes way down on the list. And again, there isn't enough evidence to prove that cardiovascular training is a really great source, unilaterally by itself as a form of fat loss. And we've talked about it for years, but I mean, I've done running competitions where somebody that carrying 40 pounds of body fat just blew past me, proving the point that maybe cardiovascular training isn't the best way to drop body fat. But nevertheless, again, when you think about the amount of work that people are doing with cardio, and let's say you're doing 30 minutes a day, and you're doing that 4 or 5 days a week, or maybe even an hour, and you're putting all that time in, the one thing that we fail to actually assess and actually pay attention to is that it's not so much the duration, and maybe your cardiovascular endurance is coming up, so your heart and lungs are becoming really good at it. You're respirating deeply, and your resting heart rate's coming down because you're becoming more conditioned, which is really amazing. Of course, that we can actually encourage the body to do that. But the problem is that something we don't pay attention to is what is happening during all those repetitions to your body mechanically. Right. So yes, our heart and lungs, of course, our organs are being affected by a couple simple external factors, which means the massive increases of oxygen being shoved down my lungs, and of course the amount of work that the muscles are requiring. Of course, the muscles require more blood, so the heart has to beat a little faster to eject more blood, right? To bring more blood through, to give it more oxygen, to feed the working muscles. So that's kind of a relatively simple mechanistic component of cardiovascular training. But what we fail to realize, though, of course, is that during the cardiovascular training, guess what else is involved? My mechanical structure, right? So, people that, quite often we see people that have shoulder injuries are really cautioned not to run or do a lot of cardiovascular activities. It's for anything that like running or jogging or elliptical because, well, my arms are involved, right? So my arms are involved in running. And again, the only reason I critique it and bring the postural stuff out is that sheer volume of repetition, of course, anchors in pre-existing processes. So if I go into my cardiovascular training with really tight lateral quads, which again, a lot of people have, very dominant, we call them vastus lateralis because they're a big freaking muscle on the lateral part of our thigh. So the vastus lateralis tends to be a very dominant, powerful muscle. And we look at the vastus medialis, of course, on the inside of the knee, and you see, bodybuilders with exaggerated physiques have that big teardrop. But that the muscle on the inside of the knee, the vastus medialis, tends to be quite a bit smaller and quite a bit weaker in a lot of individuals. So that running over time, what I end up doing is that, of course, the lateral musculature will become more dominant and stronger because that's just our natural tendency. and quite often the medialis becomes weaker and the kneecap starts to track to the outside. So we start developing things like what we call patellofemoral syndrome, which means that your kneecap, instead of your kneecap running on the grooves that are naturally built into the femur and the tibia, the kneecap actually starts getting pulled to the outside, pulled in the direction of the greatest amount of dominancy. So the musculature on the outside of the thigh, the lateralis, pulls the kneecap this way instead of the kneecap tracking up and down. And again, that happens over time. So people will quite often be told, well, you should go on a bike because it's low impact. Well, impact is not always the issue. It's the volume of repetition that doesn't take into account that the lateral part of the musculature, if it's dominant going into it, it just continues to be and more dominant. It just increases in the level of dominancy and, of course, puts more stress on the knee joint and starts creating all these orthopedic issues. Right, so again, that goes with the buttock muscles, right? So, all the world's and looking for a nice round pair of glutes, right? And again, you should be looking for the roundness to your hips, right? Because again, big, powerful muscles ideally, and if you have strong hips, of course, you tend to have less back problems, less neck and shoulder problems because your whole weight of your spine sits down on this position. So ideally, when you're standing sideways, I should be able to drop a plumb line from my ear, should cross-sect to the middle of my shoulder, to the middle of my hip, and down through the middle of my ankle, right? So I should have a pretty good postural alignment, so I have good weight distribution. But again, if I'm running, and again, this goes to cycling, any cardiovascular activity, anything that's done in a linear fashion, highly repetitious, with the main purpose in developing cardiovascular fitness, right, strong heart, lungs, or trying to lose fat, but doesn't actually take into account of all the external factors, all these muscles that we take into the workout that we're not paying attention to, which again, we're talking about calves, we're talking about shins, we're talking about quadriceps, we're talking about hamstrings, we're talking about the buttock muscle, we're talking about abdominal muscle, we're talking about what is happening within the spine, the spinning muscles, we're talking about what's happening at the level of the shoulders and neck, right? There's a whole lot of things being affected by just going for a run. Right? So again, it's just because it's the conversation is never around the mechanics of running necessarily. It's generally about the duration or the intensity. And again, there's lots of great running coaches out there that really that get this, understand that posture is king and technique is everything. But not everybody actually wants to subscribe to that because, well, you really got to pay attention, right? And a lot of people, when they want to go for a run, they want to go for a run just to clear their mind. They don't want to think. Right? They don't want to think about anything, right? I honestly, I get that, right? But I think that's what red wine was designed for. But all honesty is that if you're going from a really sedentary lifestyle and you want to do cardiovascular training and you're hoping that the cardiovascular training will be one of these things, not the only thing perhaps, but one of these things that will help bring your body fat levels down, and you take your body without the awareness of what's working and not working, and maybe you're kind of you have a beaten up posture, or you've been sitting on your ass for 20 years in a government job, and your glutes are not doing anything, and you got a slight bit of knee pain, but it's not too bad, and maybe you'll just start off slow. But if you go into your workouts with this chaotic biomechanical system, and you add repetition to it, what's stronger gets stronger, what's weak stays weak, and the problems just become greater. And of course, we've seen people go from the treadmills or the running outside. So, well, I can't run anymore. I've got knee problems. I've got back problems. I was told I should go hop on a bike because it's low impact. Yeah, but yes, it is, and it's low impact. It doesn't change the problem. The repetitions still remain the same, and unless you actually take the time to clean up what's not working, restabilize the body, start paying attention to how you show up to the workout. Yes, the bike is there's no impact on the bike, neither is on an elliptical and other modes of cardiovascular training internally, but it doesn't actually fix the orthopedic problem. And again, it still becomes worse, but again, now you're just not hammering the joints into dust because of the pounding that we normally experience from running. And of course, now it's a little bit more passive destruction, right? It's still taking the pre-existing postural faults and the musculature inadequacies or asymmetries of the body, and it's just compounding them even more. I remember taking an individual who did the Tour de Rock, or not the Tour de Rock, but the Grand Fondo, which is like a 100-kilometer race from Vancouver up to Whistler. Now, again, it just had this individual, very, very fit individual, great cardiovascular fitness. I mean, I'm not sure I could pull off I'm sure I could do a 100-kilometer ride, but it might take me a day or two, right? I don't know if I could do it in one fell swoop. It'd be a little hard on my butt. Nevertheless, again, this guy, he's putting in 60K a day on the bike. So I had him come into in my facility when I have my facility here in town, and I wanted to check his stability. So I said, listen, I want you to stand on your right leg, bend your right knee slightly, drop into your center, and then lift your left leg. And that was fine. And now sit into your left leg, and of course, now I want you to do the same thing, bend your left knee, drop into your left hip, and lift your right leg. And of course, when he did, he came very wobbly. And when we started looking at it, what we found is that the disparity of strength and capacity was really pushed heavily to the one side, which it will be to some degree because we have handedness. So I'm not discounting the fact that we're right-handed or left-handed. But the fact that the high volume of repetition, the massive amount of, we're talking tens of thousands of circular linear repetitions every day just compounded the problem more and more. And yes, it may take a couple of years before this will show up to really take you out, but ultimately it will. And what if you could actually interfere with that in the beginning? What if you actually start paying attention and you actually had a biomechanical assessment, or you had a musculoskeletal assessment where you had somebody look at your hamstring length, look at your hip flexors, look at your glute strength, look at your spinal stability, look at your upper body posture. I think it's worth the investment, and you'd actually have to go into a physiotherapist and ask them. They may not know. If you're here locally, here in Nanaimo or the surrounding area, give me a call. And I don't train a lot of people one-on-one anymore because most of my work is all done virtually, but anybody in the local area, again, if you're interested, I'll walk you through the process. The cost of about $150. Again, like I said, I don't do a lot of one-on-one training, but I'm still passionate about what I do. I just got tired of running a business, brick and mortar business. All right, getting back to the thing. So here's one suggestion. So my long diatribe, and bitching and moaning about people and their fitness. And again, I know and I try to take a positive tilt to it, but I need you to understand that the massive amount of work that people are putting into their fitness, and they're really trying, and you deserve it. You deserve to be strong and fit and functional and enjoy your life, but you have to pay attention. You have to earn that right. Right? Ignorant effort doesn't get you anywhere. Showing up is not going to get you anywhere. And the problem is that if you don't understand this, it just compounds the already shitty self-image that most people walk around in life with, saying, well, it's because I've had 3 kids and it's because of this. And yes, all those factors may play into it, but again, when you're ready to move forward, you have to do it intelligently, so you don't have your self-image determining whether or not your ability to move forward is really based on your self-worth. No, it's based on your intelligence and your willingness to ask for help, and of course, and your willingness to develop an actual skill and expertise in any particular area of human movement. So here's the thing you can look at. So before you go for a run, before you go for a cycle, before you go for a swim, right? Before you do anything, why don't you try this? Lay on the ground, and again, we're going to actually have you do a few simple exercises, and I'll post a YouTube link here and at the bottom of this video when I'm done. But I want you to start doing pelvic tilts before you hop on the treadmill, before you go for a run, before you do anything. So lay on the ground, knees bent, shoulders back and down, and I want you to tighten the muscles around the bladder and the rectum, and I want you to flex in and then gently rotate your pelvis so your lower back moves towards the floor. Right? So you pull up and then you rotate your pelvis a little bit, and by contracting your bladder and rectal muscles, which is the intrinsic part of your core musculature, they'll actually pull on the tailbone, they'll pull on your pubic bone, and they'll actually rotate your pelvis slightly. That is in around your mechanical center of gravity. So do that for, let's say, 2 to 3 sets of 15 to 20 repetitions. Flex the pelvic floor, get that slight rotation, pay attention to what you feel, think about it, think about what you feel, so your brain is actually writing notes saying, okay, that's interesting, they're flexing the bladder and rectum, and they don't have to pee, and they don't have to defecate. I wonder why they're doing it. Right? Because we don't do it consciously, it becomes more of an innate part of our physiology. But now I actually want you to think about tighten the bladder, tighten the rectal muscles, slowly rotate the pelvis. Do that for 3 sets, 15 to 20 repetitions. So, okay, that's my center of gravity, that's my mechanical core. Okay, got it. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to actually look at, do the pelvic tilt. Again, tighten your bladder and rectal muscles, rotate your pelvis so your lower back is pressed down towards the floor. It doesn't have to be tight against the floor, but again, moving in that position, again, so you feel the internal muscles strong. Then I want you to, with bent knees, I want you to lift your left foot off the ground, but keep your core muscles active. And lift the left foot up about 4 or 5 inches, take it down, 4 or 5 inches, take it down. Do that consistently, but keep your core muscles active, keep that spine stable, right? Keep that part braced, right? So lift the foot up, down, lift the foot up and down, and do that again, let's say 8 times on the left, 8 times on the right, go back and forth 2 or 3 times, paying attention that before I lift my foot, I'm going to flex my core. Before I lift my foot, I'm going to flex my core. Before I lift my foot, I'm going to flex my core. Do the same thing back and forth. Now, Same thing with your arms. So you're lying on your back, your knees are bent, your pelvic floor is braced, you've tightened your bladder and rectal muscles, you've rotated the pelvis slightly, and then take your arm overhead and hold maybe a 5-pound weight, or 5 to 8 pounds, and then reach your arm overhead. Again, you're lying down, right? So you're lying, pretend I'm lying on my back. I'm reaching overhead, and I'll stop about here, and I want to think about my core muscles controlling the length of this arm. So the longer the lever, the stronger my core should be. Brace my core to bring it back up, brace my core to take it down. And again, I want to go through that pattern about 45 degrees or so with my arm, 8 repetitions on the left, 8 repetitions on the right, go back and forth. And my focus is, can I maintain great core control and have most of the energy and most of the stress that I feel and the movement in my arms sitting inside my core? Can I do that? Awesome. If you can do that, it's freaking perfect, because now your brain says, no matter where my limbs move, what happens first? My core fires. It's the functional part of movement, and I need to teach it. That's why I've been looking at dancers and gymnasts and martial artists, some of these beautiful kind of acrobatic athletes, why they do it so well, because the brain knows where the freaking core is. We don't. Right? Doing a sit-up is not a core exercise, by the way. All right, last part here is, again, lying on your back, knees bent, right? Tightening pelvic floor. Then I want you to do some bridging exercises. And again, which means just drive through the heels and squeeze your buttock muscles in and up. Now, not straight up and down. You look at a bridge, normally people look at a bridge and it looks like to be more of a vertical movement where you're moving up and down. But again, if you think about doing bridges in a vertical movement, the brain's going to say that's kind of a linear, that's a straight line, and I don't want to ask that's actually a straight line. I want to ask it's round. So think about it, when your knees are bent and you tighten your pelvic floor, I want you to focus on bringing your glutes in, and as you squeeze your glutes together, remember they're attached to the hip out here, and they're rotating around the pelvis, right around the tailbone. So think about squeezing in as you push up, squeeze in as you push up, and you'll get a much greater contraction of your buttock muscles. Now do those things, maybe it'll take about 10 minutes, so again, manage your time wisely so you have an opportunity to do this. Do this before you do your cardio, do this before you go for a run, do it before you go for a swim, do it before you get involved in a highly repetitious activity. And what you'll find is that if you keep doing this consistently, what the brain will start doing is recognizing that, hey, before I move, before my arms move, before my legs move, before I do anything, I'm going to fire my core first, and I'm going to control all movement of my arm to here, control all movement of this arm to here. Anytime I move my leg, my core fires, and all of a sudden every exercise becomes what? Every exercise becomes a core exercise, because if you're doing it right, there's no such thing as anything that's not. All right, that's all I got to say. I have other work to do. Hopefully that helps you guys. And again, I mean, just pay attention. Your body's screaming at you. It's screaming information. We just have to be intelligent enough and start being aware. Listen to what the body's telling us and learning how to decipher it, and then learn how to make those slight course corrections on the way to getting the body and the fitness that we want. All right, guys, this is David Jelks from Factor 3 Fitness signing off. Having an incredible snow day here. Well, it's snow here in British Columbia, but I hope you're having a beautiful day no matter where you are, and thanks for hanging out. All right, bye.